Competition is fundamental for democracy. It is a way to generate equal access and a way to generate individual ambition while deciding collectively. It is a way to foster autonomous ideas and concepts. According to the liberal textbook, competition results in the selection of the best. A fictional character, an architect modeled after Frank Lloyd Wright in Ayn Rand's novel The Fountainhead, became a hero of Wall Street neoliberals in the 1980s, not by chance. Competition seems to be what both architects and neoliberals worship. At least that's the appearance. For better or worse, it seems the opposite if you look more closely. And we can see why, looking at the first international architecture competition of the 20th century, the Chicago Tribune Tower of 1922, won by Raymond Hood. Sidelining modernists like Lohs and Hilbersheimer, Hood won, but at the same time, we have to notice that Adolf Loh's column and even Hilbersheimer's entry have been published and exhibited far more than Hood's built design ever since. So in terms of exhibition, Loh's won the competition, and he won by far. If we look at exhibitions and competitions on this level as something conflated, we could also say the other way around, exhibitions are competitions. And in fact, they are. If you look at the 1925 exhibition in Paris, where Kiesler and Le Corbusier presented their designs, or at the Biennale pavilions in Venice, where you see national and architectural competition at once at play, you actually realize that each exhibition is also a sort of competition, but in the sense architects look at competition. So, for instance, the Strada Novissima by Borghese in Venice in the 1980s, early on, was basically a competition between 20 architects designing the best facade. And you see Hans Hollein actually borrowing from Adolf Loh's Chicago Tower here. And in fact, we participated in the 2017 edition of the Chicago Biennial, seen on the right, where Johnston Mark-Lee invited 20 architects of our generation to once again design a tower for the Chicago Tribune. And exactly like in the Strada Novissima, it was the idea to actually confront architectural thought in an exhibition as if it were a competition. So competitions seem to be, for us architects, a place for debate above all. And that means that participating in a competition or in an exhibition is actually for us pretty much the same thing. When we entered, for instance, the competition for the Berlin Palace reconstruction in 2008, we did not necessarily believe in the competition's mission. What we believed in was rather something different. We wanted to influence the debate, and we chose not to follow the brief, but actually opted for a different understanding of the task, which is, instead of a full reconstruction, we proposed a palace volume as a life-size model in brass of brick. That means a shell construction following the model of Alberti's and others incomplete Renaissance buildings. The naked volume is a starting point here for another discussion about reconstruction. This, in our mind, would revitalize the urban space envisioned by Schinkel, but also, and more importantly, the built model was a way to discuss the politics of the place and the historical memory and the role of architecture in the political process. So even though we didn't win the competition, it became somehow a public discussion. And so competitions can also be game changers, and they can also be game changers when they are being won, as this one that we decided for ourselves in Montreal, and which we are now building, the Insectarium in the Botanical Garden. I think it all depends very much on how competitions are being run. And this is exemplary because the Insectarium in the Botanical Garden 6 years ago was a competition that actually asked for a comprehensive design integrating architecture, landscape, and museology. And we developed a project together with landscape architects Atelier Le Balteau and with GLP and Peltier de Fontenay for Montreal. What we did, differently from most competitions, we actually made a comprehensive project integrating all these different disciplines, which we work on in our office also separately usually, but we never were able to propose together. So this competition actually made us think differently once about architecture and museology were actually conflated in one competition. We looked at the floor plan in a way of figure and ground that we had never looked at this before, and became for us actually a laboratory. We explored novel ways of making space, challenging our notions of figure and ground, but not only. We also looked at different perceptual levels, and we somehow integrated a very well-written brief by the client into a whole new concept of making space appear. So the experience of the visitor became actually central. It became all somehow a subjective parcours. And I would say that the concept of the brief allowed us to design an almost invisible architecture, something we had been thinking about a long time before, but we had not been able to express that way. And it makes total sense in relation to our museological concept, but it would not have been successful at all just as an architectural exercise on its own. So the public client, Montreal's Espace pour la Vie, played an important role here because in their years-long effort, together with museologists and other entomologists of their department, they actually prepared a brief that allowed for quite a specific solution by us. And I would say and argue that this sort of transdisciplinary competition with a content-driven jury on both the architectural and the political side proved to be very successful, and it will also in the future be the way forward. And it's the way that novelty can occur through a competition understood as a true laboratory.